Colorado, in many ways, is sort of a capsule of the American frontier. The popular mythology of archaeology is you go out and you find lost sites. That doesn't happen very often. Usually the sites are well known about before you ever go to them.
In the San Luis Valley of southern Colorado lies the lost archaeological site of Fort Massachusetts. It was occupied in the 1850s as the first military fort in Colorado. Fort Massachusetts actually has a history of being lost. A photographer first discovered the fort in the 1920s. No one else could locate the site until the 1960s when it was rediscovered by an archaeologist named Baker. Baker excavated for 3 seasons and documented the fort's location. After Baker's death, his notes went missing and the location of the fort was lost again. In 2009, Dr. Richard Goddard and Doug Blake rediscovered Fort Massachusetts with the help from the Trinchera Ranch.
You think about them, other military posts are all ready for fighting, but no fighting ever took place at Fort Massachusetts. They basically were trying to survive, do their job, and live as comfortably as possible on a frontier that could sometimes be rather brutal.
The Field School at Adams State University is open to anyone interested in anthropology or archaeology, students, staffs, and volunteers.
We introduce them to a number of forms of what is known as remote sensing. This is the use of technologies such as electrical resistance or ground-penetrating radar, which helps us find archaeological remains underneath the ground before we actually start digging. The location itself is a unique experience in archaeology because it is remote. The students will spend 6 weeks living in tents and preparing their own meals and trying to contend with the weather and contend with wild animals coming into camp. But from that experience, they also begin to gain an appreciation of what life was like in the 1850s on the frontier, because they're essentially living in the same conditions as the soldiers lived in when that fort was occupied. We're constantly asking the students, well, what do you think about this? Or what ideas do you have about what you're working on?
Because we're up here in the middle of nowhere, it gives us the ability to be able to experience what they experience.
In order to give the students a better understanding of how the soldiers lived and understood their world, we bring in a series of historical reenactors. They come in and work with the students, give them a hands-on experience, firing 150-year-old weapons and firing a cannon and getting on a cavalry horse. And we are constantly seeking grant funding to keep the cost of the students low. And it's just a very rich experience that we're able to offer.
There was a lot more to it beyond just what we learned archaeologically. I planned on coming here and learning how to trowel better, how to shovel skin better, how to use the total station. But when I came out here, they just filled us with information. I mean, between the staff here and the reenactors they brought in, it was a great experience, so I'm really glad I came.
There are very, very few military sites from that period that can be investigated with archaeology. Most of them have long since been lost or obliterated by later development.
Since there are so few military sites that archaeologists can investigate, research at Fort Massachusetts significantly contributes to our knowledge of Colorado history.
So this was some little girl's, probably her favorite possession, until she dropped it one day and it fell through between the floorboards and she never got to see it again until we found it. It's more than just doing archaeology, just digging.
True archaeologists crave an understanding of the past in its own terms. The mundane details of how people lived their lives, how they survived, what caused them to suffer, what gave them joy, and how they saw their world. That is what can be experienced at Fort Massachusetts.
It's better and better every year. Got a good crew, I gotta say. This is one of the better years, actually the best year so far.